Blood. Metal. Darkness. Daeho's hand reached for the 4-line, trembling, ready to end it all. Then she appeared in the doorway, silhouetted against the harsh hospital lights. A black woman with eyes that burned with something he'd forgotten existed. Hope. Don't even think about it, she said, her voice cutting through his despair like a blade. This is the story of a man who lost everything: his legs, his empire, his wife, and found something he never knew he needed. True love in the most unexpected place. If you're ready for a journey that will break your heart and put it back together, you're in the right place. Let's go. The stench of antiseptic and betrayal hit harder than the sedan that crushed Daeho Kang's spine. He woke to fluorescent lights burning his eyes and legs that might as well have belonged to a corpse. Dead weight. Useless. The nurse wouldn't meet his eyes when she told him his wife had already left. Gone. Vanished while he was unconscious. The divorce papers arrived before the pain medication fully kicked in. Signed, sealed, delivered like junk mail. Sumi didn't even have the decency to face him. Just a lawyer's voice on speakerphone, cold and clinical. Mrs. Kong requests no further contact. She's moving forward with her life. Moving forward. While he couldn't even move his toes. The hospital room became his prison. Tubes snaked into his arms. Every beep of the monitor reminded him he was alive but abandoned. Alive but worthless. His phone had 17 missed calls before the accident. Now it sat silent for days. His crew scattered like roaches when the lights came on. Friends stopped texting. Even his younger brother went quiet, as if paralysis was contagious. Mr. Kong, the discharge coordinator said, clipboard in hand, eyes fixed on the wall behind him. Your wife cleared out the penthouse. Took everything. The landlord says you have 2 weeks. 2 weeks to do what? Crawl? Daeho wanted to scream, but his throat was still raw from the breathing tube. Instead, he stared at the ceiling tiles, counting water stains, wondering which would kill him first. The bed sores or the crushing realization that the woman who'd promised forever had meant it as a limited-time offer. The first week was psychological warfare. Hospital staff whispered when they thought he couldn't hear. Such a shame. So young. His wife really just left him like that. Their pity was worse than the pain. At least pain was honest. His business partner Taemin visited once. Stood in the doorway like Daeho's condition might leap across the room and infect him. Listen, man. We need to discuss the syndicate. You're obviously not able to fulfill your duties anymore. The council wants to buy out your share at a significant discount. Considering the circumstances. Considering the circumstances? Daeho's voice was gravel. You mean considering I'm paralyzed and my wife stole everything? Taemin had the decency to look uncomfortable for about 3 seconds. Business is business, Daeho. You understand. He understood perfectly. Vultures circled the moment you showed weakness. The buyout offer was insulting. 30 cents on the dollar for a stake worth millions. But what choice did he have? He couldn't work, couldn't walk, couldn't even sign papers without his hand shaking so badly the pen slipped. I'll need time to review with a lawyer, Daeho managed. Taemin's smile was shark-like. Of course. You have 48 hours. After that, the offer expires and we proceed with emergency removal protocols. Medical incapacity and all that. They were going to take everything just like Sumi had. That night Daeho didn't sleep. He stared at his legs. Foreign objects attached to his body, refusing to obey. He tried wiggling his toes. Nothing. Tried bending his knee. Nothing. His entire lower body had become a tomb, and he was buried alive inside it. The darkness whispered seductive things. How easy it would be to just stop. Stop fighting, stop hoping, stop enduring the endless parade of people who looked at him with pity or greed or disgust. His hand drifted toward the call button, then past it toward the 4-line. One pull. That's all it would take. Don't even think about it. The voice cut through the darkness like a blade. Daeho's head snapped toward the doorway. She stood backlit by the hallway fluorescence. Tall, dark-skinned, with eyes that didn't flinch at the sight of him. This broken, abandoned shell of a man. She wasn't hospital staff. Her clothes were too casual, too vibrant. She carried herself with the confidence of someone who'd walked through hell and come out the other side with her spine intact. Who are you? Daeho's voice was barely a whisper. Keisha. Your new caregiver. She stepped into the room, setting down a duffel bag with practiced ease. And before you start with the whole, I don't need help routine, save it. I've heard every version of that speech. None of them work on me. Something in her tone, not cruel but unflinching, cut through Daeho's fog of self-pity. I didn't request a caregiver, he said. Hospital did. Someone has to make sure you don't do something stupid. Her eyes flicked to his hand, still hovering near the 4-line. Like that. Daeho jerked his hand back as if burned. You don't know anything about me. I know your wife left while you were unconscious. I know she took everything that wasn't bolted down. I know your crew is circling like sharks. I know you've been lying here for 6 days contemplating whether living is worth the effort. Keisha pulled up a chair, sitting so their eyes were level. What I don't know is whether you're actually going to fight, or if you're just going to prove everyone right. Prove them right about what? That you were only strong when life was easy. That the moment things got hard you folded. Keisha leaned back, studying him with unsettling intensity. Rich, powerful men talk a big game about resilience. But I've watched plenty of them crumble the second their privilege gets stripped away. So which one are you? The challenge hung in the air like a dare. And something in Daeho, buried deep under the despair and self-pity, stirred. Anger. Pure molten anger at being dismissed, at being written off. Fine, he ground out. What's your plan? Keisha's smile was sharp. First we keep you breathing. Then we make you dangerous again. If you're already hooked by this story, hit that subscribe button right now. Trust me, you won't want to miss what happens next. This journey is just beginning. And it's going to take you places you never expected. The next morning began at 5 a.m. Daeho woke to Keisha yanking open the curtains, flooding the room with painfully bright sunlight. What the hell? Physical therapy starts in 30 minutes. We need to get you bathed, dressed, and fed before then. Keisha moved with military efficiency, laying out clothes, preparing supplies. I don't take orders from. Yes, you do. For now. Keisha turned to face him fully. Look, I get it. You're used to being in control, calling the shots, having people jump when you snap your fingers. But that version of your life is over. This is your new reality. And in this reality, I'm the one with the knowledge and experience to keep you alive. So you can either accept that and work with me, or you can fight me every step and make this 10 times harder on yourself. Daeho wanted to argue, wanted to tell her where she could shove her cheerful tyranny. But something in her expression, expectant, challenging, utterly unimpressed by his wealth or status, made him swallow his protests. Why are you doing this? He asked instead. You could work anywhere, help anyone. Why sign up to deal with someone like me? Keisha paused, something flickering across her face. Pain quickly masked. Because 3 years ago I was the one in the hospital bed. Drunk driver broke my back. Both legs fractured, skull fracture. Doctors said I'd never walk again. Daeho stared. But you. I walk now. With a slight limp when I'm tired, but I walk. She met his eyes. Someone helped me when I wanted to give up. A physical therapist named David who refused to let me quit. He died 2 years ago. Heart attack. And before he died, he made me promise something. What? That I'd pay it forward. That I'd find people at their lowest and remind them they're stronger than they think. Keisha's voice softened slightly. So that's what I'm doing. Keeping my promise to the man who saved my life. The revelation shifted something in Daeho's chest. Keisha wasn't just some hired caregiver going through the motions. She understood. She'd been here. I'm sorry, he said quietly. About David. Me too. But he'd be pissed if I let grief stop me from doing the work. Keisha's expression hardened again. So are we doing this or are we wasting time? Daeho nodded slowly. We're doing this. Bathing was humiliating. Someone else washing his body, handling him like a child. Daeho kept his eyes fixed on the ceiling, jaw clenched, trying to preserve some shred of dignity. You're tensing up, Keisha observed. Relax. This is medical care, not a judgment. Easy for you to say, Daeho bit out. You're not the one being treated like an infant. No. I'm the one making sure you don't develop infections or bed sores that could kill you. Her hands were gentle but firm, professional. And for the record, when I was recovering, I had a male nurse named Derek who had to do this for me every single day. You know what I learned? What? That dignity isn't about what's being done to your body. It's about how you handle it. You can lie here feeling sorry for yourself, or you can accept that this is temporary, necessary, and nothing to be ashamed of. Keisha's eyes met his. Choice is yours. By the time they reached physical therapy, Daeho was exhausted. The therapist, a cheerful woman named Dr. Han, greeted them with relentless optimism that made Daeho want to scream. Let's see what we're working with. She positioned Daeho's leg, testing reflexes. Nothing. Tested the other leg. Still nothing. Her smile never wavered. Okay, we're starting from baseline, but that's fine. Every journey begins somewhere. How long until I walk again? Daeho demanded. Dr. Han's pause was infinitesimal, but he caught it. Everyone's recovery is different. Some patients regain partial mobility within months. Others. How long for me? The therapist glanced at Keisha, who nodded slightly. Permission to be honest. Your injury severed several neural pathways, Dr. Han said carefully. Complete recovery is unlikely, but we can work toward improving upper body strength, wheelchair mobility, and potentially some sensation in your lower extremities. There have been cases where patients with similar injuries. Just say it, Daeho interrupted, voice flat. I'm permanently paralyzed. We don't know what permanent means yet, Keisha interjected. Medicine evolves. Therapies improve. But even if your legs never work the same way, you're not helpless. You're just different. Daeho laughed, a harsh broken sound. Different. That's one way to put it. Would you prefer broken? Useless? Finished? Keisha's voice sharpened. Because I can stand here and agree with you if that's what you want. Tell you you're right. You're done. Might as well give up. Or you can stop feeling sorry for yourself and start doing the work. The words hit like a slap. Dr. Han looked uncomfortable, clearly unused to such bluntness with patients. But Daeho felt something ignite in his chest. You don't get to talk to me like that, he said, voice low and dangerous. I just did, Keisha replied calmly. And I'll keep doing it until you start showing up for yourself instead of waiting for everyone else to fix you. They glared at each other. The tension in the room was suffocating. Then slowly Daeho nodded. Okay, he said. Let's start. The session was torture. Dr. Han manipulated his lifeless legs through exercises that felt pointless. Keisha watched with hawk-like attention, correcting his posture, pushing him when he wanted to quit. Sweat poured down his face. His arms trembled. Every muscle screamed. 5 more reps, Dr. Han encouraged. I can't. You can, Keisha said firmly. And you will. Daeho wanted to throw something at her. But he also respected her, maybe. Or maybe he was just too exhausted to argue. He completed the reps barely. By the end he was drenched in sweat, trembling with exhaustion. Excellent work today, Dr. Han chirped. Same time tomorrow. Daeho wanted to tell her to go to hell, but he was too tired. Back in his room, Keisha helped him transfer from wheelchair to bed. His arms shook with the effort. Once upon a time he'd done pull-ups for fun. Now he could barely lift his own weight. I hate this, he whispered. I hate all of it. Before Keisha could respond, a voice from the doorway interrupted. Still complaining, I see. Some things never change. Daeho's head snapped up. Standing in the doorway was a man he hadn't seen in 5 years. His older brother, Minsik. What are you doing here? Daeho asked, shock overriding exhaustion. Minsik stepped into the room, expensive suit, cold expression. I heard about the accident. And the divorce. Came to see if the rumors were true. His eyes swept over Daeho dismissively. And they are. You're actually paralyzed. Minsik's tone was clinical, assessing. How much did Sumi take? Why do you care? Daeho's voice was bitter. We haven't spoken since. Since you cut me out of the family business and built your empire without me, Minsik finished. Yeah, I remember. Keisha stepped forward, protective instinct activated. I think it's time for you to leave. Minsik's eyes flicked to her, dismissive. And you are his caregiver, which means I decide who gets to stress him out. How touching. My brother reduced to needing a babysitter. Minsik turned back to Daeho. I'm not here to fight. I'm here to make an offer. I don't want anything from you. Not even 50% ownership of your syndicate back? Because I bought out Taemin's stake in the others. I now control your former empire. Min-sik smiled, sharp and calculated. And I'm willing to return it. For a price. Daeho felt like the floor had dropped out. You what? Someone had to keep the vultures from picking the corpse clean. I figured it might as well be family. Min-sik pulled out a contract. Here's the deal. You sign over all decision-making authority to me for the next 2 years. In exchange, I'll manage the operations, protect your assets, and return control once you're functional again. If you ever are. That's insane. That's survival, Min-sik interrupted. Right now you're vulnerable. Weak. Every rival, every competitor, every opportunist is circling. You need protection. I'm offering it in exchange for total control. That's not protection, Keisha said flatly. That's a hostile takeover. Min-sik's smile didn't reach his eyes. Call it what you want. The offer expires in 72 hours. After that, I sell everything and you get nothing. He dropped the contract on the bed and walked out, leaving Daeho reeling. He's bluffing, Keisha said immediately. He has to be. He's not, Daeho whispered. Min-sik doesn't bluff. If he says he bought the syndicate, he did. And if he says he'll sell it. He pressed his palms against his eyes. I'm trapped again. Keisha sat beside him thinking. What if there's another option? There isn't. What if we fight for the syndicate? Prove you're competent to run it even from a wheelchair. With what? I can barely feed myself. How am I supposed to convince anyone I can run a criminal enterprise? The same way you're going to convince them you can walk again, Keisha said firmly. One impossible step at a time. Before you go any further, do me a favor. Drop a comment below telling me what you think of Daeho and Keisha's story so far. Are you Team Keisha? Do you think Daeho can rebuild his life? Let me know, and don't forget to like this video to help others find this incredible journey. That afternoon, the hospital's social worker visited. A thin woman with kind eyes and terrible news. Mr. Kong, we need to discuss your discharge plan. Insurance will only cover another 2 weeks of inpatient care. After that, you'll need to transition to outpatient therapy or a long-term care facility. Long-term care facility, Daeho repeated numbly. You mean a nursing home? A rehabilitation center, the social worker corrected gently, where you can continue therapy. While rotting away with other people society has given up on, Daeho finished bitterly. The social worker's expression was sympathetic but firm. Do you have family who can take you in? Friends? Any support system? Daeho thought of his parents back in Seoul, aging, barely able to care for themselves. His brother, who just offered a devil's bargain. His crew, who'd already proven their loyalty was conditional. No, he said quietly. I have no one. He has me, Keisha said from the doorway. Both Daeho and the social worker turned to stare at her. I'm his private caregiver. I'll be accompanying him wherever he goes. The social worker looked doubtful. Private care is expensive, Mr. Kong. Do you have the funds? I'll manage, Daeho interrupted, though he had no idea if that was true. Between Sumi's theft, the business buyout and medical bills, his finances were a disaster. After the social worker left, Daeho turned to Keisha. You can't actually follow me to some depressing nursing home. You have your own life. My life is fine, Keisha said simply. And you need help beyond what a facility can provide. Why? The question burst out of Daeho before he could stop it. Why do you actually care? You barely know me. I'm rude, difficult, and I have nothing to offer you except. Except what? Keisha challenged. Money? Status? I don't need either. What you don't understand, Daeho, is that I'm not here because of what you can give me. I'm here because I see something in you that you don't see in yourself. And what's that? A fighter. Someone who's been knocked down but isn't actually out. Not yet. She crossed her arms. But if you want me to leave, say it. Tell me right now you want to face this alone and I'll walk away. No judgment. Daeho opened his mouth. The words should have been easy. He'd spent his whole life handling things alone, trusting no one, relying on himself. But looking at Keisha, This woman who'd known him less than a week but somehow saw past the paralysis and bitterness to something worth fighting for. The words wouldn't come. "Stay," he whispered. "Please." Keisha's expression softened. "Okay. Then we do this together. All of it." That night, Daeho dreamed of the accident for the first time since waking. The screech of tires, the sickening crunch of metal. The moment of impact when the world went sideways and his body betrayed him. He woke gasping, drenched in sweat, phantom pain screaming through legs that couldn't feel. Keisha appeared in the doorway almost instantly. "Nightmare." Daeho nodded, not trusting his voice. She crossed the room, sitting on the edge of his bed. "Want to talk about it?" "What's there to say? I relived the worst moment of my life again." "Does it get easier?" he whispered. "The nightmares." "Eventually," Keisha said. "But not if you fight them alone. When I was recovering, I had nightmares for months. Every time I closed my eyes, I was back in that car, feeling the impact, hearing the sound of my own bones breaking." She took his hand. What helped was talking about it, making it less powerful by dragging it into the light. "I don't want to talk about it." "Then don't. But I'm here when you do." The simple offer, no pressure, no judgment, just presence, cracked something open in Daeho's chest. "Thank you," he managed. Keisha squeezed his hand. "Get some sleep. Tomorrow's going to be hard." She was right. The next few days established a brutal routine. Early wake-ups, excruciating physical therapy, meals he could barely stomach. Daeho pushed himself harder than the therapist recommended, desperate to prove he could recover, that his brother's offer was unnecessary, that he wasn't finished. Then on day 4, disaster struck. During a particularly aggressive therapy session, Daeho tried to put weight on his legs with the parallel bars. Dr. Han had warned him it was too soon, but he insisted. He needed to feel his legs work. Needed proof that he wasn't permanently broken. He shifted his weight. For one glorious second he felt his right leg take some pressure. Then it gave out completely. Daeho crashed forward, smashing his face against the parallel bar. Blood exploded from his nose. Pain detonated through his skull. He crumpled to the mat, barely conscious, tasting copper. "Daeho!" Keisha's voice sharp with fear. Hands on him. People shouting. The world spinning. When he woke, he was back in his hospital bed. Nose bandaged, head pounding. And worst of all, Dr. Han standing beside him with a grave expression. "Mr. Kong, I need to be direct with you," she said. "What you did today was dangerous and counterproductive. You're not ready for weight-bearing exercises. Pushing too hard too fast doesn't speed recovery. It causes setbacks." I felt my leg. "You felt a reflex, not voluntary movement. There's a difference." Dr. Han's tone was firm. "If you keep trying to rush this, you're going to seriously injure yourself. Possibly permanently." The words hit like a hammer. Daeho had been so desperate to prove everyone wrong that he'd sabotaged himself. "How long?" he asked quietly. "Until I can actually try again?" "Minimum 6 weeks. And that's if you follow protocols." "Exactly. 6 weeks? Might as well be 6 years." After Dr. Han left, Daeho lay in silence, staring at the ceiling. Keisha sat in the corner, arms crossed, expression unreadable. "Go ahead," Daeho said bitterly. "Say it." "Say what?" "I told you so. You warned me to be patient, to trust the process, and I didn't listen." Keisha was quiet for a long moment. "You want to know what I'm actually thinking?" "Sure. I'm thinking you're terrified. And when you're terrified, you make stupid decisions trying to control things you can't control." She stood, crossing to his bed. "I'm also thinking that fall probably scared you more than any lecture I could give. So instead of rubbing it in, I'm going to ask, what did you learn?" Daeho swallowed hard. "That I can't force this. That healing has its own timeline. And that I need to trust people who actually know what they're doing instead of thinking I know better." Keisha nodded. "Good. Because if you pull that stunt again, I'm not just going to yell at you. I'm going to let you fail completely, and then you'll see what rock bottom actually looks like." The threat should have made him angry. Instead, Daeho felt relieved. Because Keisha wasn't coddling him, wasn't treating him like fragile glass. She was holding him accountable, expecting better. "I won't," he promised. "Pull that stunt again, I mean." "Good. Now rest. You rattled your brain pretty good. The next day brought another complication Daeho hadn't anticipated. Sumi's mother, Mrs. Park, arrived at the rehabilitation center like a storm. Designer clothes, expensive perfume, face painted with concern that didn't reach her calculating eyes. Daeho, she began, voice saccharine. I'm so worried about you. Sumi told me everything. How confused you've been. How this woman has been influencing you. Keisha stiffened beside him, but Daeho raised a hand. He'd handle this. Mrs. Park, with all due respect, your daughter abandoned me while I was unconscious. She stole my assets and filed for divorce before I could even feel my legs. Now she wants conservatorship? That's not concern. That's control. Mrs. Park's mask slipped for just a second, revealing cold calculation underneath. You're not thinking clearly. The medication, the trauma. I'm thinking perfectly clearly, Daeho interrupted. Clear enough to know when I'm being manipulated. How dare you? Mrs. Park started, but Keisha stood, physically positioning herself between them. This visit is over, Keisha said, voice like ice. Mrs. Park's eyes narrowed, focusing on Keisha with undisguised venom. And who exactly are you? Some opportunist who saw a vulnerable man and smelled easy money. I'm the person who stayed, Keisha cut her off. While your daughter was clearing out his penthouse and signing divorce papers. While his friends abandoned him. While people like you pretended he didn't exist. I stayed. So don't you dare question my intentions. You're after his money. What money? Keisha's laugh was sharp. His wife stole it. His crew is buying him out for pennies. His brother is holding his syndicate hostage. There is no money. There's just a man trying to survive the worst moment of his life. And I'm helping him because it's the right thing to do. Not everything is a transaction, Mrs. Park. The older woman's face flushed with rage, but she clearly recognized she'd lost this battle. Sumi will hear about this, she hissed, gathering her purse. And trust me, this isn't over. After she left, Daeho exhaled shakily. That was just the beginning, Keisha finished grimly. They're going to throw everything at us. We need to be ready. We're about halfway through this incredible journey, and if you're still with me, I want to hear from you. Hit that like button if this story is pulling at your heartstrings, and make sure you're subscribed because what's coming next will blow your mind. Daeho and Keisha's battle is far from over. That evening, unable to sleep, Daeho found Keisha in the common area, staring out the window at the city lights. Can't sleep either? He asked, wheeling closer. She glanced at him, surprised. Thought you'd be exhausted after today. Too angry to sleep. He positioned himself beside her. Thank you for standing up to Mrs. Park. She had it coming. They sat in comfortable silence for a moment. Then Daeho asked the question that had been nagging him. You said you had a car accident 3 years ago. What happened? If you don't mind me asking. Keisha was quiet for so long Daeho thought she wouldn't answer. Then quietly, I was driving home from a double shift at the clinic. Exhausted. It was raining. A drunk driver ran a red light and T-boned my car on the driver's side. Crushed the entire left half of my body. Daeho winced. God. I was in a coma for 2 weeks. When I woke up they told me I'd never walk again. Both legs shattered, spinal damage, traumatic brain injury. Her voice was steady, but Daeho heard the tremor underneath. My fiancé at the time visited once. Saw me in the ICU hooked up to machines and just left. Didn't even break up with me to my face. Just stopped coming. Stopped answering calls. Keisha, I'm so sorry. I'm not telling you for sympathy, she interrupted. I'm telling you so you understand why I'm here. Because I know exactly what you're feeling. The rage at your body for betraying you. The humiliation of needing help with basic tasks. The terror that everyone sees you as broken. The crushing loneliness when people you trusted disappear. How did you survive it? David, my physical therapist. He was relentless. Demanding. Refused to let me quit even when I begged him to. He saw something in me I couldn't see in myself. Strength I didn't know I had. Keisha's eyes glistened. He died before I could repay him. So now I do it for others. I find people at their lowest and remind them they're fighters. That's my purpose. Daeho reached for her hand. You're incredible. You know that. Keisha smiled sadly. I'm just keeping a promise to someone I loved. But thank you. The moment stretched between them. Not romantic, not yet, but something deeper. Recognition. Understanding. Two people who'd been broken, finding solace in shared scars. Then Daeho's phone rang, shattering the peace. It was Attorney Choi, and the news made Daeho's blood run cold. Daeho, we have a problem, Choi said without preamble. Sumi is filing for conservatorship. She's claiming you're mentally incompetent to manage your own affairs due to trauma and medication. If she wins, she'll control everything. Your assets, your medical decisions, your entire life. Daeho's hand clenched around the phone so hard he thought it might shatter. She abandoned me, and now she wants to control me? She's arguing she panicked initially but has since reconsidered and wants to fulfill her wifely duties, Choi said, disgust evident in his tone. It's transparent as hell, but legally she has standing. And with your brother controlling your syndicate, her lawyers are going to argue you're being taken advantage of from all sides. How do I fight this? You need to prove you're competent, lucid, capable of making decisions, which means we need medical evaluations, psychological assessments, witness testimony. Choi hesitated. And we need to address your relationship with Keisha. What about it? Sumi's team is going to use it against you. They'll argue you've developed an inappropriate dependency on your caregiver, that you're making emotional rather than rational decisions, that you're vulnerable to manipulation. Daeho looked at Keisha, who'd been listening on speaker. Her expression was carefully neutral. So what do we do? Daeho asked. We fight, Choi said. But it's going to get ugly. She's going to dig up everything. Your mental state, your relationships, your finances. Everything. You need to be prepared for warfare. After hanging up, Daeho sat frozen. Keisha found him like that, staring at nothing, jaw clenched so tight it ached. Talk to me, she said gently. He told her everything. Sumi's legal maneuver, the conservatorship threat, the fact that their relationship, whatever it was becoming, would be used as evidence against him. Maybe, Keisha started then stopped. Maybe what? Maybe I should step back. Professionally. Become less involved so they can't use us against you. No. The word came out fierce, automatic. I need you. Not just as a caregiver, as... He struggled to find the words. As someone who sees me. Really sees me. If you step back, Sumi wins. And I'd rather lose everything than give her that satisfaction. Keisha's eyes searched his face. You're sure? I've never been more sure of anything. She nodded slowly. Okay. Then we fight together. And we show them exactly how strong you are. Daeho managed to smile. Together. I like the sound of that. But as he lay in bed that night, unable to sleep, Daeho realized the true war was just beginning. Sumi wasn't just trying to control his assets. She was trying to control his entire existence. To reduce him to an incompetent invalid who needed her protection. And the worst part? Part of him wondered if she was right. Was he incompetent? Was his growing attachment to Keisha real? Or just desperation for someone who didn't abandon him? The doubt gnawed at him like acid in the darkness. Keisha's earlier words echoed. Healing has its own timeline. Daeho hoped that timeline would move fast enough to save him from the coming storm. Because Sumi was just getting started and she played for keeps. The war began with paperwork. Mountains of legal documents, medical evaluations, cognitive assessments, financial audits. Every aspect of Daeho's life dissected under legal microscopes, searching for proof of incompetence. His lawyer, Attorney Choi, was a shark in a suit. Expensive, ruthless, and exactly what Daeho needed. Sumi's legal team is exceptional, Choi admitted during their first strategy meeting. They're painting you as a trauma victim, unable to make sound decisions. They're going to argue that your relationship with Keisha is proof of impaired judgment. That you're latching onto the first person who showed you kindness. Our relationship? Daeho's blood pressure spiked. What we are or aren't doesn't change my competency. In a perfect world, no. But we don't live in one, Choi interrupted, eyes sharp. Because from where I'm sitting, you two look at each other like drowning people who found the same piece of driftwood. And that's fine, human even. But Sumi's lawyers are going to twist it into something predatory. The words hung heavy. Daeho glanced at Keisha, who sat rigid beside him. Choi opened his briefcase. We need psychiatric evaluation from an independent doctor, cognitive testing, proof of financial literacy, witness testimony from medical staff, therapists, anyone who can vouch for your mental state. He hesitated. And we need to prepare for them to attack Keisha. Attack me how? Keisha asked, voice carefully controlled. They'll dig into your background. Look for any hint of impropriety. Past relationships, financial troubles, criminal history, anything they can use to paint you as manipulative or opportunistic. Keisha's jaw tightened. Let them look. They won't find anything. But Daeho saw the flash of something in her eyes. Fear. No, something else. A shadow from her past she hadn't shared yet. What is it? He asked after Choi left. Nothing. Keisha. I said it's nothing. Her tone cut like glass. We should focus on your evaluation. That's what matters. Daeho wanted to press, but the wall between them was suddenly inexplicably solid. 48 hours before Daeho's psychiatric evaluation, his brother's deadline arrived. Min-sik appeared at the rehabilitation center like a specter. Expensive suit, cold calculation radiating from every pore. He dropped a revised contract on Daeho's lap. Final offer. Sign over decision-making authority for 18 months instead of 2 years. I'll even give you quarterly profit reports. But if you don't sign by midnight tonight, I liquidate everything. The syndicate you built becomes a memory. Daeho's hands trembled as he read the terms. 18 months of his brother controlling his life's work. It was better than the original offer but still felt like surrender. Why are you doing this? Daeho asked. If you hate me so much for what happened 5 years ago, why not just destroy everything and walk away? Min-sik's expression flickered. Something almost human beneath the ice. Because despite everything you're still my brother. And watching vultures pick your corpse clean while you're still breathing. He shook his head. Even I'm not that cruel. This is your idea of mercy? This is my idea of survival. You're paralyzed, broke, and fighting a conservatorship battle you might lose. If Sumi wins, she controls everything anyway. At least with me, there's a chance you get it back. Min-sik leaned closer. But I need an answer. Now. Keisha stepped forward. He's not signing anything while preparing for a competency evaluation. It would look like exactly what Sumi's claiming. That he makes impulsive decisions under pressure. Then he loses the syndicate, Min-sik said flatly. Maybe that's acceptable, Keisha countered. Maybe keeping his autonomy matters more than keeping his assets. Min-sik's eyes narrowed, assessing her. You actually believe that, don't you? That money doesn't matter. I believe people matter more. How noble. Min-sik turned back to Daeho. But nobility doesn't pay medical bills, doesn't fund therapy, doesn't keep you out of state nursing homes where they warehouse people like you until you die. The words hit like hammer blows. As Min-sik was right. Without money, Daeho's options collapsed to almost nothing. I need time, Daeho said quietly. You have until midnight. After that, the offer evaporates and so does your syndicate. Min-sik walked toward the door then paused. For what it's worth, I hope you beat Sumi. She's a snake. You deserve better than her. After he left, Daeho sat paralyzed. Not physically this time but mentally. Every option felt like a trap. What are you thinking? Keisha asked gently. That I'm drowning. And every rope thrown to me has weights attached. Keisha knelt beside his wheelchair. Then maybe you don't grab any of them. Maybe you learn to swim. How? We fight Sumi. We prove you're competent. And once that's settled you rebuild from scratch. No brother controlling you. No wife manipulating you. Just you making your own choices. That could take years. I could lose everything in the meantime. You've already lost everything, Keisha said bluntly. Your legs, your wife, your syndicate. What you haven't lost is your mind, your will, and your future. Those are worth protecting. Even if it means starting over with nothing. Daeho looked at her. This woman who'd appeared in his darkest moment and refused to let him surrender. She was right. Fighting for scraps of his old life meant letting other people control him. But walking away meant freedom. Terrifying, uncertain freedom. I'm not signing, he decided. Keisha smiled. Good. At 11:47 p.m., Daeho called his brother. I'm not signing your contract, he said when Min-sik answered. Do whatever you want with the syndicate. I'm done letting other people dictate my life. Silence. Then, you're sure? I've never been more sure. Another pause. You always were stubborn. Good luck with Sumi. You'll need it. The line went dead. Daeho exhaled, feeling simultaneously liberated and terrified. No going back now, Keisha observed. No, Daeho agreed. But at least I'm moving forward on my own terms. The psychiatric evaluation was scheduled for the following week. Dr. Rachel Morrison, a renowned neuropsychologist with a reputation for brutal honesty. Daeho spent days preparing, rehearsing answers, steeling himself. Then 3 days before the evaluation, catastrophe arrived in human form. Daeho was in physical therapy when Keisha suddenly went rigid, staring at the entrance. He followed her gaze and saw a man. Tall, handsome, expensive watch, confident smile. The kind of man who'd never known a day of struggle in his life. Keisha, the man called. Is that really you? Keisha's face drained of color. Brandon, what are you doing here? Brandon. Daeho's mind raced. She'd said her fiancé had abandoned her, but she'd never mentioned his name. I was visiting a patient in the building and saw your name on the caregiver registry, Brandon said, approaching. His eyes flicked to Daeho dismissively before returning to Keisha. You look amazing. I've been trying to reach you for months. I changed my number, Keisha said, voice tight. I noticed. Brandon's smile was charming, practiced. Look, I know how we ended was complicated, but I've done a lot of growing, a lot of thinking, and I realize I made a mistake. Walking away from you was the worst decision of my life. Daeho felt ice flood his veins. This was her ex-fiancé, the one who'd abandoned her after the accident. You need to leave, Keisha said, voice shaking slightly. Just hear me out. Leave, Daeho interrupted, wheeling forward. You heard her. Brandon finally acknowledged Daeho's existence. And you are the person she didn't abandon, Daeho said coldly. Unlike you. Brandon's expression flickered. Annoyance mixed with calculation. Look, I don't know what Keisha told you about our relationship, but it was complicated. She was in a bad place. I was overwhelmed. She was paralyzed, Daeho's voice rose. And you left. That's not complicated. That's cowardice. Daeho, Keisha said quietly. Don't. Why not? He deserves to hear exactly what kind of person he is. Brandon's charming mask slipped. You don't know anything about our history. I know enough. I know she needed you and you disappeared. I know she built a life without you. And I know you don't get to waltz back in because you suddenly decided you made a mistake. The confrontation drew attention. Dr. Han approached, concerned. Is everything all right here? Everything's fine, Keisha said quickly. Brandon was just leaving. Brandon held up his hands, mock surrender. Okay, I'm going. But Keisha. His voice softened. I meant what I said. I want to make things right. I'll be at the Riverside Hotel for the next week. Room 412. If you want to talk, really talk, you know where to find me. He left, and the silence he left behind was deafening. Keisha's hands trembled. Daeho reached for her, but she pulled away. I need some air, she said, voice hollow. Keisha, wait. But she was already gone, leaving Daeho reeling. She didn't come back for 3 hours. Daeho spent the time in agony, mind racing with worst-case scenarios. What if she went to see Brandon? What if the ex-fiancé's reappearance made her question everything? What if Daeho lost the one person who'd stood by him? When Keisha finally returned, her eyes were red but dry. She'd been crying but was done with tears. I need to tell you something, she said, sitting across from him. About Brandon. The whole truth. Daeho waited, heart pounding. I lied to you, Keisha began. About my physical therapist. His name wasn't David. David was real. He did die 2 years ago from a heart attack. But he wasn't named after anyone. I combined 2 people in my story. Then who? Brandon Washington was my fiancé. We were together for 4 years. Engaged for 8 months. We were supposed to get married 3 weeks after my accident. Keisha's voice was steady but brittle. When I woke up paralyzed, he visited once. Stood at the foot of my hospital bed, looked at me like I was already dead and said, I can't do this. Then he left. Blocked my number. Had his lawyer send a formal notice ending our engagement. Daeho felt rage burn through him. Keisha. Let me finish, she interrupted. For 2 years I hated him. Hated myself for loving him. Hated that I'd built my entire future around someone so hollow. Then I met you and I realized something. What? That I'd conflated 2 people in my story. David, who taught me to fight, and Brandon, who taught me what not to accept. I combined them when I told you about my recovery because... She swallowed hard. As I was ashamed. Ashamed that I'd loved someone who abandoned me. Ashamed that part of me still wondered if he left because I wasn't worth staying for. That's not true. I know that now logically. But emotionally, seeing him today brought everything back. The humiliation, the betrayal, the fear that maybe I am fundamentally unlovable when things get hard. Daeho wheeled closer, taking her hands. You're not. You're the strongest, most loyal person I've ever met. Brandon is a coward who didn't deserve you. And the fact that he's showing up now when you've built a life without him, that's not love. That's ego. I know, Keisha whispered. But part of me, a stupid broken part, wants to hear what he has to say. Wants closure. Or maybe just the satisfaction of telling him exactly what I think of him. Then do it, Daeho said. Go talk to him. Get your closure. I trust you. Keisha's eyes widened. You trust me. Completely. You've earned it 1,000 times over. Daeho squeezed her hands. But promise me one thing. What? Don't let him rewrite history. Don't let him make excuses or manipulate you into thinking his abandonment was anything other than what it was. A choice he made that says everything about him and nothing about your worth. Keisha's eyes filled with tears. How are you so good at this? At seeing people clearly. I'm not. I'm learning from you. They sat in silence, hands intertwined, the weight of shared trauma and trust binding them. If this story is hitting you right in the feels, show some love. Drop a like on this video and leave a comment telling me what you think Keisha should do. Should she confront Brandon? Let me know your thoughts. The next evening, Keisha went to the Riverside Hotel. Daeho insisted she take his phone, location sharing enabled. Not because I don't trust you. Because I don't trust him. Brandon's hotel room was exactly what she expected. Expensive, sterile, designed to impress. He opened the door in designer casual wear, smile warm. Keisha. I knew you'd come. Don't, she said, stepping inside. Don't act like this is some romantic reunion. I'm here for one reason, to tell you exactly what your abandonment cost me. Brandon's smile faltered. I deserve that. You deserve worse, but words will have to do. Keisha stayed by the door, refusing to get comfortable. When you left, I didn't just lose my fiancé. I lost my sense of self. I spent months wondering what was wrong with me. Why I wasn't worth staying for. Why my paralysis made me disposable. Keisha, I was scared. Everyone's scared. She cut him off. Life is terrifying. But you don't abandon people you love because you're scared. You fight. You stay. You show up even when it's hard. Especially when it's hard. Brandon had the decency to look ashamed. You're right. I was a coward. And I've regretted it every day since. I don't believe you. It's true. If it were true, you would have reached out years ago. Apologized. Made amends. But you didn't. You only showed up now because you saw me thriving, saw me with someone else, and your ego couldn't handle that I built a life without you. Keisha's voice was ice. This isn't about making things right. This is about you needing to feel like you're still important to me. You're not. Brandon's mask cracked completely. You've clearly moved on. With your patient. How professional is that? More professional than abandoning your fiancée when she's paralyzed. Keisha shot back. Daeho sees me. Really sees me. Not as a caregiver or a fixer or someone to manage his image. As a partner. As an equal. Something you never did, even before my accident. So that's it? You're just going to walk away? No. I already walked away 2 years ago when you forced me to. This conversation. Keisha moved toward the door. This is me closing a chapter you left open. Consider it closed. She left without looking back. Outside she called Daeho. He answered on the first ring. You okay? He asked immediately. I'm perfect, Keisha said and meant it. Coming home. I'll be waiting. The psychiatric evaluation arrived like Judgment Day. Dr. Rachel Morrison was severe. Sharp eyes, no-nonsense demeanor, the kind of person who could spot deception from across a room. She set up in the hospital's private consultation room, recording device activated. "Mr. Kong, I'm going to ask you a series of questions," she began. "Some will seem simple, others complex. Answer honestly. There are no wrong answers, only truthful ones." For 3 hours she grilled him. Cognitive tests, memory assessments, ethical scenarios, financial decisions. She asked about the accident, about Sumi, about Keisha, about his plans for the future. "Tell me about your relationship with your caregiver," Dr. Morrison said eventually. Here it was. The trap. "Keisha saved my life," Daeho said carefully. "Not just medically, but emotionally. When everyone else abandoned me, my wife, my friends, my crew, she stayed. She challenged me. She refused to let me quit." "And you've developed feelings for her?" "Yes." Dr. Morrison made a note. "Some might argue those feelings stem from dependency, rather than genuine affection." "Some would be wrong," Daeho replied. "I'm not confused about what I feel. Keisha and I have been through hell together. We've seen each other at our absolute worst. And what we've built isn't dependency. It's partnership. Mutual respect. Something my marriage never had, even before the accident. Your wife claims she left because she was overwhelmed, that she's since reconsidered and wants to care for you. How does that make you feel?" Daeho laughed, sharp and bitter. "It makes me feel like she's lying. Sumi didn't leave because she was overwhelmed. She left because I became inconvenient. And she only wants back now because she sees an opportunity to control my assets through conservatorship. That's quite an accusation. It's quite a pattern. Would you like to see the financial records showing she'd been stealing from me for months before the accident? Or the evidence of her affair? Or the fact that she literally fled the hospital before I regained consciousness?" Dr. Morrison's expression remained neutral, but Daeho saw the flicker of interest. The evaluation continued. By the end, Daeho was exhausted but felt he'd represented himself well. Dr. Morrison gave nothing away. "My report will be ready in 1 week," she said. "The court will receive it directly." 1 week. 7 days of not knowing whether his entire future would be ripped away. 3 days after the evaluation, Sumi showed up. Daeho was in his room reviewing financial documents with Keisha when the door opened. Sumi stood there, perfectly dressed, makeup flawless, playing the role of concerned wife. "Daeho," she began, voice soft. "We need to talk. Privately. Anything you have to say can be said in front of Keisha," Daeho replied flatly. Sumi's mask flickered. "This is between husband and wife. We're not husband and wife. You filed for divorce. Remember? I made a mistake." "You made a choice," Daeho interrupted. "A calculated, deliberate choice to abandon me at my most vulnerable. And now you want to pretend it was just a momentary lapse in judgment? No, I'm not playing this game." Sumi's composure cracked slightly. "You don't understand what it was like. Watching you in that hospital bed. Knowing you might never walk again. Knowing our entire life was destroyed." "Our life wasn't destroyed," Keisha interjected quietly. "Your comfortable, easy life was disrupted. There's a difference." Sumi turned on her, venom barely concealed. "You don't get to speak about our marriage. You're just the help who got ideas above her station." "I'm the person who stayed when you ran," Keisha replied calmly. "And that clearly bothers you more than Daeho's paralysis ever did. How dare?" "Enough," Daeho cut through the rising voices. "Sumi, leave now, or I'll have security remove you." Sumi's eyes glistened. Whether genuine tears or performance, Daeho couldn't tell anymore. "I'm trying to save you from making a terrible mistake. That woman is using you. That woman has a name, and she's shown me more genuine care in 3 months than you showed in 5 years of marriage." Daeho's voice was steel. "This conversation is over. Your lawyer can communicate through mine." For a moment, Sumi looked genuinely wounded. Then the mask reformed, cold and calculating. "You're going to regret this," she said quietly. "When the court grants me conservatorship and you realize you had a chance to reconcile on good terms, you'll remember this moment and wish you'd chosen differently." "I already regret something," Daeho replied. "I regret not seeing who you really were before I married you." But I'm done making that mistake. After she left, silence filled the room like smoke. That was brutal, Keisha observed. It needed to be. She keeps testing boundaries, seeing if I'll cave. I needed to draw a line. And if she's right? If the court grants conservatorship. Daeho took Keisha's hand. Then we appeal. And we keep fighting. Because I'd rather fight for my freedom and lose than surrender to someone who sees me as property. The report arrived 6 days later, delivered via attorney Choi. She deemed you fully competent, Choi said, barely concealing his satisfaction. Cognitively intact, emotionally stable, capable of making independent decisions. Her report is comprehensive and unambiguous. It's a complete vindication. Relief flooded through Daeho so intensely his vision blurred. So the conservatorship will almost certainly be denied. We file this with the court today. Sumi's case collapses. Daeho looked at Keisha, whose eyes shone with fierce pride and unshed tears. We did it, he whispered. You did it, she corrected. You showed them exactly who you are. But celebration was premature. 2 days later, Sumi's legal team filed an emergency motion. They claimed Dr. Morrison had been compromised, that Keisha had coached Daeho, that the evaluation was tainted. They submitted evidence, photos of Keisha and Daeho holding hands, sharing meals, their body language suggesting intimacy. They're arguing the relationship itself proves impaired judgment, Choi explained, furious. That you're emotionally dependent on Keisha, and therefore incapable of objective decision-making. That's insane. It's strategic, Choi corrected. And it'll delay the hearing by at least 6 weeks. Maybe more. 6 weeks. 6 more weeks of uncertainty, of Sumi's manipulations, of legal limbo. Daeho felt something inside him snap. Then we go public, he said quietly. What? We take this story public. Show everyone exactly who Sumi is and what she's doing. No more playing defense. We go on offense. Choi looked horrified. That's incredibly risky. If you go public. She's already dragged me through hell privately. At least publicly I control the narrative. Keisha grabbed his arm. Daeho, think about this. Once you go public you can't take it back. The scrutiny, the judgment. I'm tired of hiding, Daeho interrupted. Tired of letting her define me as incompetent, as a victim, as someone who needs to be controlled. I want the world to see the truth. Then let's make sure they see all of it, Keisha said slowly. Not just your story but hers too. Every theft, every lie, every manipulation. Choi hesitated then nodded. If we're doing this we do it right. I'll prepare a comprehensive statement. Medical records, financial evidence, timeline of events. We leave nothing out. That night Daeho recorded a video. Raw, honest, unflinching. He detailed the accident, the abandonment, the theft, the conservatorship filing, Sumi's reappearance and manipulation tactics. He showed scars, physical and emotional. He introduced Keisha, explaining her role, their relationship, the genuine partnership they'd built. I'm not incompetent, he said directly to the camera. I'm healing. And healing is messy, uncertain, and sometimes looks like weakness. But it's not. It's the strongest thing I've ever done. And I won't let someone who abandoned me at my lowest now control me at my highest. The video went live at 8 p.m. on a Thursday. By midnight it had 50,000 views. By morning 500,000. News outlets picked it up. Social media exploded. The backlash was immediate and vicious. Public opinion split violently. Team Daeho. She abandoned him paralyzed and now wants his money? Disgusting. This is what a real gold digger looks like. Sumi, not Keisha. His wife is a monster. I hope he destroys her in court. Team Sumi. He's clearly being manipulated by his caregiver. This is textbook grooming. A paralyzed man falling for his nurse? That's not love. That's Stockholm Syndrome. She's using him for money and fame. Can't you people see it? But the worst comments targeted Keisha. Racist, vile, threatening. Daeho watched her hands shake as she read the messages, watched the fear she tried to hide behind practice calm. We're going to the police, he said immediately. It's just internet trolls. It's hate speech and death threats. We're reporting every single one. But the police were dismissive. Online harassment is difficult to prosecute unless there's a credible, specific threat of imminent harm. There are dozens of specific threats, Daeho exploded. The officer shrugged. We'll file a report. But honestly, best thing is to ignore it and increase your security. Ignore it. As if they could ignore messages promising violence. That night, someone found Keisha's address, posted it online with the caption, "Let's pay the gold digger a visit." Keisha moved into Daeho's room. Not for romance. For survival. "This is my fault," Daeho said, guilt crushing his chest. "I should never have gone public." "Stop," Keisha commanded. "This isn't your fault. It's theirs. The people sending threats. The people who see a black woman caring for an Asian man and assume something sinister. This is their ugliness, not yours. I'm still sorry you're going through this. I'm not going anywhere," Keisha said fiercely. "Threats or not. You hear me? I'm not Brandon. I don't run when things get hard." The declaration hung in the air between them. A line crossed. A truth acknowledged. Daeho reached for her hand. "I love you. I need you to know that. Not as my caregiver, not out of gratitude or dependence. I love you as a person, as a partner, as someone I want to build a life with." Keisha's eyes filled with tears. "I love you too. Have for weeks, maybe longer. And I'm terrified of what that means, but I'm more terrified of losing you." They kissed. Desperate, certain, full of fear and promise and defiance against a world trying to tear them apart. We're in the final stretch now, and this is where everything comes together. If this story has moved you, if Daeho and Keisha's love has inspired you, hit that subscribe button. You won't want to miss how this incredible journey ends. And drop a comment, are you team Daeho and Keisha all the way? While the internet raged, Attorney Choi was working behind the scenes. He called 3 days after the video went viral. "Daeho, we found something. Something big." "What?" "Financial records showing Sumi was siphoning money from your joint accounts for 6 months before the accident. Small transfers carefully hidden, building a safety net while you were still healthy and unaware." The betrayal cut deeper than Daeho expected. It was one thing to be abandoned in crisis, another entirely to realize it had been premeditated. "She was planning to leave me anyway," Daeho said, voice hollow. "Looks like it. The accident just accelerated her timeline." Choi's voice was grim. "We're filing this with the court. It destroys her credibility. Shows premeditation, planning, deliberate theft. Will it be enough? To sink the conservatorship case? Almost certainly. To expose her publicly? Absolutely." Daeho thought about Sumi's performance in his hospital room. The tears, the apologies. All of it calculated theater. Release it, he decided. Let everyone see exactly who she is. The evidence hit social media like a nuclear bomb. Suddenly, public opinion shifted violently. People who defended Sumi scrambled to delete their posts. News outlets ran stories about premeditated spousal abandonment and financial abuse. Sumi's PR team released a statement claiming the transfers were for household expenses and joint financial planning. But the pattern was damning. Every transfer corresponded with cash withdrawals. No paper trail. Just money vanishing into accounts Daeho had never known existed. The court hearing was scheduled for 2 weeks later. In the meantime, Sumi's world collapsed. Her social circle abandoned her. Business contacts stopped taking her calls. Even her own mother, Mrs. Park, distanced herself publicly. Daeho should have felt triumphant. Instead, he felt hollow. "You okay?" Keisha asked one evening, finding him staring out the window. "Just thinking about Sumi. How completely her life is unraveling. She did this to herself." "I know. But it's still hard to watch someone you once loved destroy themselves. Even if they deserve it." Keisha sat beside him. "That's what makes you different from her. You still have empathy. She never did." 3 days before the hearing, Daeho received a message from an unknown number. "I'm sorry for all of it. You deserve better." He showed it to Keisha, who read it skeptically. Could be another manipulation. Maybe. But it feels different. "Do you want to respond?" Daeho thought about it, then deleted the message. No. Some bridges need to stay burned. The courtroom was packed. Media representatives, supporters, curiosity seekers. Daeho wheeled himself to the plaintiff's table, Keisha beside him, Attorney Choi ready for war. Sumi sat across the aisle, perfectly composed in designer clothes. But Daeho noticed the tremor in her hands, the slight pallor under her makeup, the cracks in her armor. Judge Yoon called the proceedings to order. We're here to determine Mr. Daeho Kang's competency and the validity of Mrs. Sumi Kang's conservatorship petition. Attorney Lee, Sumi's lawyer, went first. He painted Daeho as a trauma victim unable to think clearly, presented the relationship with Keisha as evidence of impaired judgment, called expert witnesses who'd never met Daeho. Then Attorney Choi stood. He methodically dismantled every argument, presented Dr. Morrison's evaluation, called hospital staff who testified to Daeho's clarity, showed the financial records proving Sumi's premeditated theft. Mrs. Kang didn't leave because she was overwhelmed, Choi argued. She left because her plan to financially gut her husband was complete. The accident simply accelerated her timeline. And now, seeing him recover without her, she wants control. Not out of love or concern, but out of greed and wounded pride. Sumi's mask finally cracked. That's not true. Mrs. Kang, you'll have your opportunity to testify, Judge Yoon said sharply. When Sumi took the stand, she performed brilliantly. Tears at the right moments, voice breaking with emotion, explaining how scared she'd been, how she'd panicked, how she regretted everything. I love my husband, she said, looking directly at Daeho. I made terrible mistakes, but I want the chance to make things right. To be there for him. To rebuild what we had. Daeho felt sick. She was good. Dangerously good. Then Attorney Choi began cross-examination. Mrs. Kang, you claim you love your husband. Is that correct? Yes. Then can you explain these bank transfers? He displayed the financial records. 6 months before the accident, over $200,000 transferred to accounts in your name only. Sumi paled. Those were for household expenses? Paid in cash with no receipts? $200,000. The courtroom erupted. Judge Yoon gavelled for order. And this? Choi showed messages between Sumi and her lawyer, dated 2 weeks before the accident, discussing exit strategies and asset protection. Sumi's composure shattered completely. You don't understand. Oh, I understand perfectly. You were leaving him regardless of the accident. The paralysis just gave you an excuse that made you look like a victim instead of a thief. That's not. I was scared, I didn't. You want the truth? Sumi suddenly screamed, abandoning all pretense. Yes, I was leaving him. He was cold, distant, married to his work. I was lonely, isolated, and I deserved better. The accident just made it easier. There. Are you happy? I said it. The silence that followed was deafening. Judge Yoon's expression was ice. I've heard enough. Mr. Kang is clearly competent. The conservatorship petition is denied. Furthermore, I'm ordering a full financial audit and referring this case to the district attorney for potential fraud charges. Victory. But Daeho felt no triumph. Just exhaustion and profound relief. Outside the courthouse, Sumi made one final attempt. She approached, mascara-streaked, hands shaking. Daeho, please. No, he said quietly. It's over. You're free. Isn't that what you wanted? I wanted a life. Not this. Not public humiliation and criminal charges. You made your choices, Keisha said firmly. Now you live with them. Sumi looked at Keisha with something almost like envy. Take care of him. He deserves someone who actually sees him. Then she walked away, shoulders shaking, and Daeho knew he'd never see her again. You okay? Keisha asked. I will be, Daeho replied. Eventually. They went home. Not to a hospital, but to the small apartment Daeho had managed to rent with his remaining funds. It wasn't much, but it was theirs. That night they celebrated quietly. No parties, just the two of them surviving against impossible odds. What happens now? Daeho asked. Keisha took his hand. Now you decide what you want your life to look like. Who you want in it. What matters? I already know, Daeho said. You. This. Us. Building something real together. Together, Naomi agreed, kissing him softly. And for the first time since the accident, Daeho felt not just alive, but genuinely hopeful about the future. 2 weeks later, Daeho had his 6-month post-accident evaluation. Dr. Han ran him through comprehensive testing. Range of motion, nerve response, muscle control. Then, unexpectedly, I want to try something with the parallel bars. Daeho's stomach clenched. The last time he'd tried this, he'd smashed his face and set recovery back weeks. I'm not ready. You are. Trust me. Dr. Han positioned him carefully. We're not talking about walking across the room. Just standing, bearing your own weight for 5 seconds. Keisha stood nearby, ready to catch him if he fell. Daeho gripped the bars, took a breath, pushed. His legs trembled. Muscles screamed. For one terrible second he thought they'd give out completely. Then, impossibly, miraculously, they held. 5 seconds. 10. 15. Daeho, you're standing. Keisha whispered, tears streaming down her face. I'm standing, he repeated, awe in his voice. 20 seconds. His legs began to shake violently. Dr. Han helped him back into the wheelchair, but the triumph was absolute. That's the first real progress toward independent mobility, Dr. Han said, beaming. With continued therapy, you might regain partial walking ability. With a walker or cane for support. Might. The word was cautious, but it was hope. That night Daeho couldn't sleep. The possibility of walking, even assisted, felt like a door opening to a future he'd mourned as lost. What are you thinking? Keisha asked, finding him on the apartment balcony. That I might walk again. Not run marathons or climb mountains, but walk. Stand at my own wedding. Dance with my... He stopped, realizing what he'd almost said. Dance with your what? Keisha's smile was knowing. Daeho took her hand. Keisha Carter. I don't have a ring. I don't have the syndicate I once built or the wealth I used to have. I can barely stand for 20 seconds without shaking. But I love you with everything I am. And I want to spend the rest of my life proving it. Will you marry me? Keisha laughed through tears. You're proposing without a ring on our tiny balcony? I'm proposing with the only thing I have left that's worth anything. My heart. Completely, irrevocably yours. Then yes. God yes. 1,000 times yes. They kissed as the city lights flickered below. Two people who'd survived betrayal, paralysis, public humiliation and threats, and somehow found each other through it all. 3 months later the wedding took place. Small ceremony at a garden venue. 20 guests, no media, no spectacle. Just love witnessed and celebrated. Daeho wore a suit he'd chosen himself. Keisha had helped him dress, but he'd insisted on standing with a walker for the ceremony. You don't have to, she'd said. No one expects. I expect it from myself. I'm standing when I marry you, even if it's just for 10 minutes. When Keisha walked down the aisle, radiant in a simple white dress, eyes locked on his, Daeho felt everything else fade away. The accident, the betrayal, the battles, none of it mattered anymore. What mattered was this moment. This woman. This choice. The officiant began. We're gathered to witness the union of Daeho Kong and Keisha Carter. Two people who found each other in darkness and chose to build something beautiful from the wreckage. Daeho barely heard the words. He was too focused on Keisha, on the way she smiled at him like he was the only person in the world, on the absolute certainty that this was what his life had been leading toward. Daeho, do you take Keisha to be your lawfully wedded wife? I do. His voice was clear, strong, unwavering. Keisha, do you take Daeho to be your lawfully wedded husband? I do. I now pronounce you husband and wife. They kissed as their friends cheered. Daeho stood for 12 minutes before his legs began to shake. Keisha helped him back into the wheelchair, but the triumph was absolute. He'd stood for their wedding on his own 2 feet, exactly as he'd promised. The reception was small, joyful, filled with laughter and stories and hope. Dr. Han gave a toast about resilience. Keisha's sister admitted she'd been wrong about Daeho. Attorney Choi made everyone cry with a speech about fighting for the people you love. As the evening wound down, Daeho and Keisha stood alone on the garden terrace, watching stars emerge. So, Keisha said, leaning against him, how does it feel being married? Like coming home after being lost for years, Daeho admitted. Like every terrible thing that happened was necessary to get me here. To you. You don't regret anything? I regret the pain, the betrayal, the time wasted. But those things led me to you. So how can I regret the path that brought me the best thing in my life? Keisha's eyes glistened. You know what I realized today? What? That we didn't just survive. We built something beautiful from survival. A life. A partnership. A love that's not perfect, but it's real. And it's ours. Daeho pulled her close. Ours. I like the sound of that. 6 months after the wedding, the rehabilitation center opened on a crisp autumn morning. Daeho and Keisha stood at the entrance. The Phoenix Center. Recovery, resilience, renewal watching patients arrive for the grand opening. They'd spent months building it. Fundraising, planning, hiring staff committed to treating patients as whole people, not broken bodies. Creating programs modeled after Daeho's own recovery journey. Free services for those who couldn't afford care. Support groups for families, adaptive technology, mental health counseling integrated with physical therapy. Everything Daeho had needed but struggled to find. This is incredible, Keisha whispered, watching a young woman in a wheelchair navigate through the accessible entrance, her face lighting up at the welcoming environment. It's just the beginning, Daeho replied. But it's ours. We built this. A reporter approached. They'd agreed to one interview carefully controlled. Mr. Kong, how does it feel to open this center after everything you've been through? Daeho thought carefully. A year ago, I woke up paralyzed and abandoned. I thought my life was over. I genuinely believed I had nothing left worth living for. He looked at Keisha. And then someone showed up who refused to let me quit. Who saw strength in me I couldn't see in myself. Who taught me that healing isn't about returning to who you were, but becoming someone stronger. And your ex-wife? Any comment on her recent statement from Singapore? I wish her well, Daeho said honestly. I hope she finds peace and builds a life she's proud of. But she's not part of my story anymore. My story is about this. He gestured at the center. About the people we'll help. The lives will change. The hope we'll provide to people who think they have none left. After the interview, as they toured the facility, Daeho marveled at how far he'd come. He could walk short distances now with a cane. Slowly but independently. His upper body was strong. His mind was clear. And most importantly, he'd built a life that wasn't defined by what he'd lost, but by what he'd gained. That evening, they returned to their apartment. Larger now, more comfortable but still modest. Daeho didn't need the penthouse he'd once owned. Didn't need the luxury cars or the expensive suits or the status symbols that had meant everything in his old life. He had Keisha. He had purpose. He had peace. What are you thinking? Keisha asked, finding him on the balcony. That I'm grateful, Daeho said simply. For all of it. The accident that destroyed my old life. The betrayal that forced me to see clearly. The paralysis that taught me real strength. Because without those things I never would have met you. Never would have built this life. Never would have understood what actually matters. Keisha smiled, resting her head on his shoulder. You know what the best part is? What? This isn't the ending. It's just the beginning. We have decades ahead of us. Decades to build, to love, to help people to grow old together. She squeezed his hand. And I can't wait for all of it. Daeho kissed her softly. Neither can I. They stood together, watching the city lights flicker to life. Two people who'd been broken and had rebuilt themselves stronger. Not perfect, not unmarred by scars, but whole in the ways that mattered. Daeho thought about Sumi in Singapore, hopefully finding her own path to redemption. He thought about his brother, who'd eventually reached out to congratulate him on the wedding and the center. He thought about all the people who'd abandoned him when he was at his lowest. And he felt nothing. Not anger, not resentment. Just indifference. They weren't his story anymore. His story was Keisha's laugh when he made terrible jokes. The patients at the center slowly regaining hope. The quiet mornings making breakfast together. The plans for the future. Maybe kids someday. Maybe expanding the center. Maybe just growing old and happy. I love you, he said, voice thick with emotion. I love you too, Keisha replied. Always. And in that moment, Daeho knew something with absolute certainty. He'd lost everything. His legs, his wife, his syndicate, his old life. But he'd gained something infinitely more valuable. Himself. And the woman who'd helped him find it. Some things are worth more than legs that work. Like a heart that's finally learned what it means to be whole. If this story touched your heart, if Daeho and Keisha's journey moved you, Do 3 things for me right now. Hit that subscribe button so you never miss another incredible story like this one. Smash that like button to let me know this resonated with you. And drop a comment below. Tell me what moment hit you hardest. Was it when Keisha first appeared in that doorway? When Daeho stood at his wedding? When they opened the Phoenix Center? I want to hear from you. This is what real love looks like. Not perfect, not easy, but real. Built through fire and forged in pain. And if you're going through your own storm right now, remember Daeho and Keisha's story. Remember that sometimes we have to lose everything to find what truly matters. Thank you for being here. Thank you for witnessing this journey. And remember, your story isn't over either. It's just beginning. Until next time, keep fighting. Keep loving. Keep believing that even in your darkest moment, someone might walk through that door and change everything.